So earlier we saw the first order condition of constraint optimization, and today we will be moving into the second order, which will ensure us that the critical point that we will be dealing with, whether it is a maximum or a minimum or something else. Okay. Now for our purpose, we will be concentrating on only two options. We will be learning whether it is a maximum or it is a minimum. Okay. But before going into that, I will just mention that see, the optimal scriptel star, that is the Lagrangian function that we construct while solving. Okay, this optimal scriptel star is independent of the value of lambda star. Okay, by which I mean that whatever value we may put in the place of lambda. So let's see if I so that is in some way or the other, what I'm saying is that for any value of lambda. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that if I put any lambda, okay, this script L star, the optimal value is not going to change, and this is quite trivial because our construction of script L star was of this type, right? So lambda into c minus g of x comma y. This was a construction, and for lambda star L script L star, this becomes, I mean, we put lambda star, but the point is that while evaluating this, okay, we maintain this constraint to be 0. So this equals to 0, and since this is 0, the value of lambda star doesn't come into evaluating what script L star will be. So, and in other words, what I'm saying is that the role of lambda star is a bit different. So rule of lambda star is different. Okay, not really. It is. We cannot say that the role of lambda star is like the role of x and y. Okay, it's not. And this is why, as we have shown, that while calculating this, this entire portion becomes 0, and it is because this portion becomes 0, so it doesn't count whatever we write here. All right, so keeping that in mind, we will move into the derivation of the second order condition. Now, the basic minimum or the bare rule of the second order condition, it remains the same. So in standard optimization, that is in univariate optimization, we have studied that we need the second order to be negative in order to ensure a maximum, and we also need the second order to be a positive in order to ensure a minimum. So that basic understanding remains the same, but here instead of simple things, we will work on the value of d2z, where our z equals f of x comma y. So this is something that we will be considering here. All right, so d2z equal d2z, and obviously the addition to this d2z is that subject to the fact that dg equals 0, right? So this comes from our constant. Let's see, this equals 0. From here we come to this. Now the rule, as I said, it remains the same. So what is the rule? The rule is that for maximum, so for maximization, d2z is negative definite. So instead of writing negative, we are writing negative definite because, like unconstrained multivariate optimization, we'll end up with a determinant, or to say it properly, a matrix. So we are writing it in terms of matrix. So d2z is negative definite subject to dg equal to 0. So this part is kind of silent implicit inclusion everywhere. we write or we comment on the second order condition. So this is something that we have to, that has to satisfy, and we will keep that in mind in an implicit format. We will hold that in mind always. Okay, whatever we do, dg will be equal to 0, and while doing the while deriving the condition, we will see how the role of this constant is being played out. Okay, so for minimization, it becomes just the opposite. So d to z is positive definite, d to z is positive definite, and obviously subject to dg equal to 0. All right, so now we will move into our derivation, but again, before that, we will take a look at this form that dg equal to 0 takes in order to understand something we have not really explicitly said. So dg equal to 0 means that the first order partial with respect to x, that is gx dx plus gy dy equal to 0. Now what it tells us is that dy equal to minus gx by gy dx. We can always choose to write it the other way, that is dx equal to minus gy by gx dy. That doesn't really harm anything, but the result or the knowledge that we are learning, looking for, the lesson is that dx and dy are dependent. So that's something, right? That's different from the unconstant case. So dx and dy are dependent here, and this is the role that is being played out by this constant. In derivation, we will explicitly include this to maintain this fact that whatever condition we end up with, it serves dg equal to 0. Okay, so let's go to the derivation. I must say that it's a long derivation, and in between the derivation, we are going to substitute a lot of things, and sometimes we'll also change the notation according to our own advantage, and that is something you have to look for. Okay, so let's start. So d to z, okay, which basically means d of dz. All right, and that said, this is del z of dz dx plus del y dz dy. Okay, and now here we are going to put the form that dz takes, considering that z equal to f of xy. Oh, sorry. Yes. All right. So dz is fx dx plus fy dy. So that goes, and then dx plus del y, again fx dx plus fy dy, and again dy. Now, obviously this comes from the fact that z equal to f of x comma y, but we must also say that in no way you can think that, as I said earlier, that fx, fy, gx, and gy, they are functions of only x and y. We are doing the derivation under the general construct. So at each and every step, we are going to consider that each of these and these two, they contain both x and y. Okay, and as you will be doing the problems of consumer behavior, you will see that basically gx and gy, they become constants, right? The prices px and py. But in general, we cannot really assume that. And also it is true that in some sense, that's why the utility maximization problem under consumer behavior, it is a bit simpler. Okay. So let's perform the differentiations. So fxx dx, right? Then fxy dy plus fy del dy del x, right? Dx. Okay, now the reason I'm writing this term, which is a bit unusual in general, the kind of derivation that you are used to observe, okay, that doesn't contain a term like this. The reason of this term is essentially that we saw that dx and dy are dependent. So I can, it's true that dy basically is a function which involves x. Okay, so that's why this differentiation. All right. So the same kind of expansion for that one also. Right? So fyx dx plus fyy dy plus fy del dy del y. Okay. So we are working on a quite general structure. Everywhere it is explicitly assumed that it's a function of both x and y. The reason of doing like this is that while doing this derivation, we don't want to, kind of assume things, so that instead of being a general derivation, it becomes specialized, and the result that we obtain, we may not end up it to be related to something only in specific. Okay. So now open the bracket and write it. So fxx dx square, fxy dy dx plus fy del dy del x dx plus fyx dx dy plus fyy dy square plus fy del dy del y dy. Okay. Now look at these two terms, this one and this one. Okay, we can sum them up and write a smaller notation. So what would that be? You see the first order partial fy, we can take it out and put the whole thing in bracket. So this is del dy del x dx plus del dy del y dy. So what am I doing here? I'm taking dy to be something which involves x and y, and I am differentiating with x and y each, right? So I can write it like this: fy d of dy which equals to Fy d2y, much like d2z, right? So d2y. Okay. So putting it like this, it allows us to have a nicer form. So if I look at the line that is written above the board, the first line, and I put this in that line, then it becomes something like this. So from here, I'm writing again. So d2z equals fxx dx square plus 2fxy, the application of Young's theorem here, okay, and then fyy dy square. Now, earlier in unconstant optimization, we have stopped here, right? But here we can't do that. Here, because dy and dx are independent, related, we have this term. And this term creates a problem. And what is the problem? The problem is this, that this line that we have here, this expression of d2z, this is not a quadratic form. This is not a quadratic. This is not a quadratic form. And what is the problem of not having a quadratic form? If I now want to get the kind of structure which is similar to what we end up in unconstant maximization, we will not be able to get that here. So we need to do something, right? And we will substitute this expression by something that we will obtain from working with the constant g of x comma y equal to c. Okay, so let's see that. Let's see what that gives us, and then again we will substitute it here. All right, so here we have a d2y. So that basically means that with regard to the constant also, we have to move into its second order, and we have to see, we have to look for the expression of d2y. Okay, so from the constant g of x comma y equal to c, and from that, since c is a constant, we wrote that dg equal to gx dx plus gy dy equal to 0. Now, going for the second order, and again holding that gx and gy both are function of x and y, we have gxx dx square plus 2gxy, because we will have gxy and gyx, so gxy dx dy plus gyy dy square and gy d2y. Okay, because here dy is dependent on dx. Because of that, we have this extra term. So now what will we do? We will basically solve this equation for d2y. So I'm not doing that because it's again a host of a huge list of complex, or rather not complex, rather calculations which are quite big in size. That's it. Okay, it's not complex. So from here, what we are looking at here, so here we are looking at what is then d2y equal to. So we can find that, right? We can find what d2y equal to from this equation d2g, and then we are going to substitute that in here in place of d2y. So if I do that, okay, if I do that, and then you can imagine that there will be, if I do that, then gy, this gy will come as a denominator for all these expressions, right? Because it is gy d2y. So we will have gy as denominator everywhere. And since here this d2y is multiplied by fy, we will have a term which will look like this, which will be this fy divided by gy, right? So can we agree on that? I'll say it again. Here gy is multiplied with d2y. So whenever I am writing something d2y equal to something, this gy will go as a denominator. Again, when I'm substituting this one in here, fy is there as a multiplier. So fy is being multiplied. So then in general, I will have an expression like fy divided by gy, right? Okay, so, and this expression, this has a huge role to play. Why? That is quite easily observable, right? Because in the first order conditions, we saw that fy divided by gy is equal to lambda. So I'll write the equation now, which will be another version of d2z, where d2y has been substituted and calculated to get a form with which we are familiar. And then I'm going to replace this fy divided by gy by lambda. All right. So what does it look like now? So now d2z equal to fxx minus lambda. Sorry, let me first write fy by gy, right? So fy by gy gxx. So that is our first term, goes there. Then plus 2 into the dx dy part, right? So fxy minus, again, fy divided by gy, and we'll have gxy here, then dx dy, plus the third term fyy minus fy divided by gy into gyy dy square. So now we don't have this d2y part, right? And now we can go for, or at least we can think of a determinant that we may end up with. Okay, so the next duty is to write it replacing our fy by gy here by lambda. So there the expression becomes fxx minus lambda gxx, right, dx squared plus 2 f of xy minus lambda gxy dx dy plus fyy minus lambda gyy dy square. And these three expressions are directly coming from differentiating the first order conditions of the Lagrangian function, that is STREL. So this is script L, once again script Lx, once again differentiated by x. So Lxx dx square plus 2 into script Lxy dx dy plus script Lyy dy square. Okay. Now, That's fine. So we have arrived at our d to z that we wanted. So this is our d to z, right? But still there is a catch, and the catch is this: it is not only the form of d to z that we are interested in. We are interested in this form of d to z, that is true, but also which satisfies dg equal to 0. And dg equal to 0, we saw that gives us an expression which connects dx and dy. So let's see that if I substitute the fact that, so substitute the fact that dy is minus gx divided by gy dx, or since we have dy square here, dy square is basically gx by gy whole square into dx square here. So if I substitute that, what happens? Because again I'll say that the condition depends on d to z being negative or positive definite, but obviously not in general, within that specific zone where dg equal to 0. And dg equal to 0 gives us this expression, and we extend it to this one because we are going to replace it in the place of dy square. Okay, so let's see if I do that, what do I get? Because then only we will be dealing with that form of d to z in which dg equal to 0 holds true. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so d to z now equals to, just going to put that directly. So script L xx dx square, it remains the same. Again, script L xy remains the same. So dx, and here we're going to put this. So this will give me a minus here instead of a plus, and then gx gy, and this dx with this dx will become, okay, so let's write it a bit clearly. Okay, so we had one dx from Lxy and another dx by replacing dy. So minus gx by gy, the minus comes here, and this becomes dx square plus script L yy, and then just going to put the entire expression. So gx square divided by gy square into dx square. Okay. Now, what do? We'll take out dx square because it appears everywhere, and also to make us able to end up with a form of determinant, we are also going to take out gy square. So if I take gy square here, then here we will have script L xy into gx gy, and here we will have script L xx into gy square. Now let me say one thing. See, taking out dx square is fine. If you don't want, you cannot do that, but then you have to adjust in the determinant that we will obtain later. So instead of doing adjustments in the determinant itself, we are just looking at an expression which is free of this dx square because it is common, and also which is free of any kind of denominator like gy or gy square. Okay, so this is just for our convenience, nothing else. So let's write that. So script L xx into gy square. Okay, so no dx here, sorry. Okay, minus 2 script L xy gx gy plus script L yy gx square, right, into dx square by gy square. Okay, so that's our expression here, and as you can see that From this term d to z, we have moved into a different form of d to z, a form which deals with only that structure of d to z for which dg equals 0. Now, please write here dx square is greater than 0, right? And gy square is also greater than 0. Gy square is greater than 0 because this is basically a square term. So it will be positive, right? And same goes for dx square also. So these are positive. So that means the sign of d to z, which is important here because that's what we're looking at. So the sign of d to z depends on this expression, right? This expression here. So expression in third bracket. So the expression that is in third bracket, on that it depends. All right. So now we are going to write this form as a determinant. So what will that determinant be? You can see that quite easily, right? So d to z will be minus of 0 gx gy, again gx gy, scriptal xx, scriptal xy, and here I must write, okay, so this will be actually yx, and this will be xy, and this will be yy, right? Multiplied by dx square by gy square. Okay. So this is the determinant that we are looking for a long time. Now, given we have it here, so what is the condition now? The condition is, you see, this comes with a minus sign, right? So that means if I need d to z to be negative, I need this determinant to be positive. But again, if d to z is negative definite, then what I have got is a maximum. I'm going to say it again. If I need d to z negative, then I need the determinant to be positive. But if d to z is negative definite, then we are dealing with a maximum. So in a nutshell, if I take out the d to z's negative definite component, what we are saying is that if I am looking for a maximum, then I need this to be positive, and if I'm looking for a minimum, then this needs to be negative. All right, so that is going to be our result. So let's state the result, right? And this result is our second order condition that we are searching, or that which we are trying to construct. So what is our result? Number one is that for maximum of z, so for max z subject to dg equal to 0, what we need? We need this to be negative definite, and that means we need, so if and only if this determinant here is positive, all right? And number 2, for minimum or for minimize z, again subject to dg equal to 0 if and only if this determinant is negative. Okay, so here we are with the second order condition that we are looking for, and this determinant, okay, without the negative sign, this determinant is our famous bordered Hessian. This is our bordered Hessian. So why it is bordered Hessian? You can see it very simply, because if I take this part only, of this determinant, okay, so let me write like this. Okay, if I make lines here, then this is our age-old Hessian, right? It is the Hessian of unconstant optimization. And above and on the side of this Hessian, we have a border. We are calling it a border. So we have an extra row and column with 0 here. Yes. And then gx, gy on both the sides. Okay. Now, so this is our border Hessian, and we denote it by this symbol, Hessian with a border. Okay, so that means this determinant, if we calculate the value of this determinant at the optimal point given by the first order conditions, we'll be able to tell whether we are dealing with a maximum or a minimum. Okay, now we are going to use what we famously call transfer learning, but in this case it's basically a specific example. Now if I consider a very specific example, the general form of consumer utility maximization problem. So the problem we'll be dealing with is this. So the problem is maximize utility, right? U of, let's say, x1 comma x2, where x1 x2 comes here, subject to the constant p1 x1 plus p2 x2 equal to m. So this is the general structure of utility maximization problem in consumer behavior. Now, given our knowledge of constant optimization, this is nothing but a special case, right? So instead of z equal to f of xy, we have written this, and instead of g of xy equal to c, we have taken a very specific linear function where the first orders p1 and p2 are constants because the consumer takes them as given. So if I translate this to the language of second order condition, our second order condition here, so SOC here will be like this. We'll be looking for D2U to be negative definite, right? Because we are looking for a maximum. So we're looking for D2U being negative definite, subject to D of let's say P1 x1 plus P2 x2 equal to 0. Now you can now in this expression you can see the role of taking the money that is available to a consumer to be exogenous, right? One of the reason keeping m fixed is that with m fixed, dm is definitely equal to 0. It's fine. All right, so this is our condition of utility maximization written in English, right? So we want D2U to be negative definite subject to this. D of the budget constant equal to 0. Since m is constant, obviously it will equal to 0. So now if I write this, if I translate this into the determinant here, what do I need? So I'm on the left side, I'm going to write the border Hessian that we will get if we work with this problem, right? Okay, so here also we will have 0, and then instead of gx gy we will have p1 p2, here also p1 p2, and this part it remains the same, right? Scriptal xx, scriptal yx, scriptal xy, and scriptal yy. Obviously now these script L's, they belong to the utility maximization problem here. Okay, so now you can take a specific problem and solve them, and you can see. Now I am going to give you 2 utility functions, okay, general form utility functions, for which now I'm saying it in advance that if I take this one u equal to xy, and if I take pxx plus pyy equal to m, and if I construct a Lagrangian and do all of this maximization, then we will see that the second order condition will satisfy. So if I follow Lagrangian here, scriptal will give us that this is indeed positive, so we'll get a maximum. Try that and you'll find that. And number 2 is, let's say u equal to x squared plus y squared. Now if you take this utility function, okay, and again you try Lagrangian along this line with this utility function, you will find that this border Hessian, the value of the border Hessian here that will appear will not be positive. So let's just say that here you will not be able to find the maximum using the Lagrangian method, and that will be guaranteed by the value that we'll get for border Hessian. All right. So we'll see the limitation regarding to the use of Lagrangian method in order to maximize utility of a consumer. Okay, these 2 problems will give you an idea that although in constraint optimization we have learned a lot of things, and to check to solve for the first orders from the first orders and then check the second order, not all utility functions really fall into this category where using Lagrangian will give us a nice answer. I mean, it will give an answer, but the problem is that that answer will not really maximize the utility, it will minimize in some cases. Okay, so that also shows that why the value of border Hessian is so important. Though the calculation is a bit lengthy, you cannot just write given any utility function that second order condition is satisfied, because it will not be if I deal with this kind of an utility function. Okay, so now only few specific things are left. First thing is that here also we'll be interested in one similarity, and the similarity is this, that our border Hessian here is also the Jacobian. Okay, and that tells a lot of things. So what I'm saying is, given that this is true, that border Hessian is equal to the Jacobian in the constant optimization case, if SOC is satisfied, and this is a very important sentence, if SOC is satisfied that indeed we found a maximum or a minimum, or that which we are looking for in the first place, then border Hessian is not equal to 0, correct? So let's say we are maximizing and this becomes positive, so this is not 0, and that immediately will say that the corresponding Jacobian is also not equal to 0. So now this is important. Why? Because having a non-zero Jacobian always brings in our mind a theorem which is called implicit function theorem. Right? So that's how our mind goes, right? So whenever we see that Jacobian is non-zero, the second word, the second phrase that comes in our mind is basically implicit function theorem. And what implicit function theorem enables us to perform is comparative statics. So with non-zero Jacobian, we have a situation where we can apply implicit function theorem. Okay, and using implicit function theorem, we will perform some comparative statics. Comparative statics. And those comparative statics, rather one of the comparative statics, it will enable us to derive a very famous result. And that result is called Slutsky equation. Right? Okay. So what in the end we will derive is Slutsky equation. Okay, so I'll just make the connection again. Border Hessian is basically the Jacobian. So SOC satisfaction means non-zero border Hessian, which means non-zero Jacobian, which immediately brings us to implicit function theorem, which will allow us to do some comparative statics. And one of them is the famous Slutsky equation. We have two kinds of parameter in the consumer demand problem or the problem of utility maximization. One is related to prices and the other is related to money. Now we have seen that the lambda, it gives us the marginal utility of money earlier, right? Now the comparative statics that is related to prices, that will give us the Slutsky equation, which we'll see in a different